Hi, I'm Kevin Shane. I'm CEO of ACD.net. We're here with Jay Elliott, who's one of the early employees at Apple, a senior vice president. Jay, thanks for coming out here to the Michigan Broadband Conference and speaking.
Well, thank you for bringing me out here. It's great.
Yeah, we appreciate it. One thing that I was really interested in is kind of the next phase we hear about at perhaps at Apple and definitely over at Google is the you know infusion of Silicon Valley in the auto industry, and kind of what your thoughts are on that and how that may affect the U.S. auto industry. Ford, GM, Chrysler, and those types of companies.
Well, I think it's interesting technology. I believe it's going to be difficult to get people to get away from driving their cars, but I see places that can be utilized. It's sort of interesting being in Silicon Valley, driving up the freeway, and you see a car come by you. It's a Google car. There's no driver, but there's somebody sitting on the passenger side. But it's here. I mean, it's going to be. I'm just not sure how that's going to impact, if people really want that or not. It's one of those technologies that I just think we have to wait and see. I mean, but there's obviously great uses, I believe, within cities and other things that they can use it for.
Yeah, do you see the fusion of the U.S. high-tech industry working directly with U.S. auto manufacturers, and kind of like, we hear about these Google dashboards and Apple dashboards going into these cars as well?
Yeah, I think ultimately we're going to see a lot more. We're going to see more automation. We're going to see more jobs coming back because there's going to be more infusion into the auto industry, particularly the American auto industry. And I think it's going to be a great impact on Michigan as an example.
Yeah, I thought one of the things that was really interesting was, especially with Apple, as they introduced their iPods and then their iPhones, was kind of the reemergence of the U.S. tech companies taking control of the cellular handset business. Like before the iPhone and some of these newer technologies, we saw a lot of Nokia, Ericsson, a lot of these foreign companies really, some of them European, dominating the handset business with just kind of lone Motorola there. And what are your thoughts on the ability of the high-tech industry to kind of bring back control of those types of industries?
I think it's very high. I believe you look at the spectrum of costs. As labor costs go up, robotics goes down, then they're going to bring the jobs back. And I believe there's going to be a huge infusion, because they're going up in price as they go through their problems as a society. Robotics is going down, and I believe they're going to bring a lot of that back to the United States. It's going to create a different kind of workforce, but I believe it's going to be a huge impact on a positive one on our society.
What early on in your career, after you left IBM and kind of got infused into the Apple system, what kind of real cultural kind of things did you see were different in IBM and Apple, and what lessons do you think there are for American businesses these days?
Well, first of all, Apple was a startup, and I think as a startup, IBM was a well-established, incredibly well-managed company, leadership, but they didn't really have much of a vision for the future. They were built on a business planning and business for the sort of today, but no real thought about the future. And they were also guarding their stuff, so they were guarding the computer rooms of the world, and they didn't really see ability to break out of that. Apple, I think, one of my jobs at Apple was to help build the culture, Steve was focused on the product. I was focused on making sure that we had a structure in place to accommodate the hiring of about 5,000 people in about 3 years. And so we had to have ability to do that and keep the culture from getting changed. Right. I was called the keeper of the culture because I was responsible to make sure that we didn't hire the wrong people and all of a sudden things became IBM. And that's easy to do if you're not careful.
How strong is these days, do you think, is the culture of continuous innovation, as opposed to kind of the old guard administrative way of seeing things, and being ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater if you need to, right?
Yeah, but the culture, it's interesting about Apple culture. Remember, after Steve was thrown out, Scully took over, and the culture survived even under him. And I think that's the reason Steve came back so fast and made things happen so fast, is because the culture was still intact. And I think that's true today. I think Tim Cook, I don't agree with a lot of things going on with Apple today, but Tim Cook has kept the culture alive and is still very strong.
Interesting, and I think that's kind of the, as some of the old guard companies like General Motors, they went through a bankruptcy phase, right? And we see Detroit went through that same kind of thing. But I think that's the new wave.
Right, and if you look at companies, to me, I call them the zombie companies like HP and IBM. I mean, I'm not sure how they're going to survive. Apple has more cash in the bank than their net worth is for both those companies. I mean, it's just, I mean, they're disintegrating. I mean, I don't see how you can survive being a service business, and I just think they made some really bad decisions.
Yeah, what do you think? How extensive do you think the cloud computing is going to affect those old guard tech companies?
Well, I think it's going to affect them because I think the cloud is going to be different, and I think they're not going to catch up with it. And I think as we get into much more mobility and the way we handle mobility, I think they're out of it. I mean, they're not part of the game, and I just think they're going to be highly effective as we move ahead.
Yeah, where do you think Microsoft is at these days? And they're kind of in a catch-up phase, it seems like.
Yeah, but the new guy that they brought in as CEO is trying to turn that around, and I was a speaker at a Microsoft conference, which is funny because an Apple guy, but they're trying to look at different ways to utilize. Remember, they still have a major hold on software business, and but they got to turn that software into being much more mobile and much more usable outside the office, and I think that's what so I think they have the right strategy, and I think they have the right guy in place. So I would bet on Microsoft coming back in some ways.
Yeah, I think what's kind of really interesting is how we see the auto industry. We used to think about it as a manufacturing business, right? Yes. But really, it's not. It's now a technology race with these new drivetrains, the new fuel cells and battery systems and stuff like that. We now have shifted from a manufacturing centric, and certainly manufacturing is extremely important, right. But what's going to keep that manufacturing going here is the tech infusion.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and also the car is your second most home. I mean, the more you can do in your car, the more it's going to think. But I think you're right. I think a lot of the technology is now, now people even hack cars. I mean, that's and stop them on you. Or now even look what happened with Volkswagen when they modified their software to relate to the air emission. I mean, it's just they're technical now. I mean, it's no longer just a product that's like what used to be a car.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming out here today. I really appreciate your time, and it's good to see such a prominent individual coming in and talking to us in Michigan at our broadband conference. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.